Welcome to the Innovator's Journey. Here we come. All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I guess it's 12 p.m. Yeah, fantastic. We'll get everybody in here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Looks like we have a nice small group today, which is fantastic. So lots of opportunity. Welcome to the Innovator's Journey with Chapters for Change. Really excited to share with you today this amazing journey. If you were with our Innovator's Journey yesterday with Peter from Move, you would have seen that we worked in Mural, and we heard a really awesome story about a Georgian grad from the automotive program, who looked at how they might tackle transportation and accessibility. And today I'm really excited to actually have Georgian faculty on the line today to tell us about a story about something called Chapters for Change. So we got Jennifer and Janice. You wave there, say hi to everybody. Do you guys want to really quickly introduce yourself before we get into your story, just to sort of do that?
For sure. Sure. So my name is Jennifer Shelswell. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a faculty member at Georgian College, predominantly in Aurelia. Have taught in gen ed, communications, but more often than not, you'll find me in the early childhood education department. Really love my job, and especially after, and we'll dive into this as the journey goes on, but you'll learn why I feel even more so fulfilled in my position at Georgian now after becoming a faculty change maker. So yes, we'll dive into some information about our journey and Chapters for Change, and looking forward to taking you on this adventure with us.
And my name is Janice Desroches. My pronouns are also she, her. I work at not Georgian College. I feel like I work at Georgian College. I've been so involved with Georgian, but I've been working at Brock University for over 17 years now, teaching at the post-secondary level. And equity, diversity, and inclusion have always been very important to me. But we're gonna, again, touch on why those things have become even more so important to both of us through our journey. So I'm very happy to be a part of this. Thank you to Nicole and all of those who are attending. We look forward to hearing some of your potential questions at the end.
Yes, and thank you for joining us today. This is fantastic. So this is the educator's journey. It is the educator's journey on this one. This is the innovator's journey, and what we do here, this is a structured format, so everybody has to be involved in this, because even though we're going to hear the story of Chapters for Change today, we're going to learn what that's about. We actually want you to join along in this journey, and we're going to be doing that in Mural. So I'm actually posting a link for everybody into the Mural. We want you to click on that link, join us in here. I'm going to actually share my screen right now just to sort of do that. So as everybody gets in there, does everybody see my screen? Everybody see my screen? All right, yeah. Fantastic. So welcome. Everybody okay? All right. I can't see the chat at the moment, so we can do that. Okay, fantastic. So we're going to talk about in the innovator's journey today and what we've gone on. So we're going to start out today in Mural. We want you to contribute to this. So Janice and Jennifer are going to tell their story about something that they created using the human-centered design thinking process, something called Change the Now. They're going to talk about where they started, where they ended, and where they are today. And you are going to call along, you're going to listen to this journey. And what we want you to do is we want you to contribute. So here's the journey we're going to go on today. You can see it in the Mural. If I sort of expand it out, there's lots of stuff going on here, but we're going to actually systematically walk you through it. And we want you to listen. And when you hear something that's crazy, cool, amazing, or awesome, we want you to actually contribute it to this Mural. This Mural is meant to be contributed by everyone. And for those of you who are not familiar with Mural at this particular point in time, really simple. Mural is worked best by zooming in and out. As you can see, I'm using my mouse. I'm actually connected to a laptop, so you can actually see I'm using move mouse or trackpad mode. So as you can see, if you're on a trackpad, you can pinch to zoom, or you can use your two fingers to swipe and move around. I'm selecting to use my mouse, and that's how we're going to do it today. Okay. The other thing too is to know along the side here, there's a menu alongside the left. When you click on this menu, it gives you lots of tools and resources. So lots of sort of tools. And the ones I want to identify with you today is to contribute are sticky notes. So you can grab those sticky notes, bring them across. There's icon. So if you think there's something really, really cool, something's hot on fire, you can actually do that as well too. You can change the color. Really great. This is a blue fire, so it's even hotter than a red. And you've got images. You can actually search Google Images. So you can say Georgian College logo. Right, this goes right into, if I can spell it right. So excited, I can't even spell Georgian College today. So you can drag those over, and this is how we want you to contribute today. So as you're listening and hearing to our wonderful speakers talk about how they innovated, created, actually, I would say you're almost burgeoning on the edge of a company right now, but used an innovation process to do that. So that's amazing. So, but we're going to start out here today because Janice and Jennifer helped me build this mural. And what they really wanted me to do today is, because they are faculty, they wanted you to check in. So the first task we want to do here today, before we get started, why did you choose this activity? Why did you choose this activity, Jennifer and Janice? You want to talk about it? And what do you want people here to do today?
All right, so I selected this activity just as a wellness check. Actually, we haven't touched on it yet, but we're both very passionate about self-care and wellness. So opening up a session, we always feel that it's very important for faculty, students, and staff to really check in to see how you're doing as we enter the space together. So we'd invite all of you you can indicate by putting a little sticky note by how you're feeling. If you felt like putting some more information down below it with a sticky note describing some more information with regards to how you feel, we invite you to do that now. So it looks like Nicole has put some sticky notes there that you could potentially drag over to the face where you kind of feel that you are at. They're all different color coded. Again, I'd invite you can type on the sticky note to give a little brief description of how you're feeling and just to see how everybody's doing today.
Now, this is a really great warm up to sort of this contribution. And I feel like you're going to touch on this a little later on with the human-centered design thinking process, like how we, collaborate, right? Yeah. Kind of starting with empathy. I feel like this is sort of an empathetic approach.
Yep, exactly, Nicole. And yeah, exactly. So when you can do that check-in like this, it is a very important thing where we can then properly empathize with other people. So if we notice if some people are in that orange or red zone, again, acknowledging that we're all just coming into this space, how we are, and with whatever we have. So we don't need to be perfect coming into the space, but just to bring what we have to this space as we are.
And how important did you find that in sort of this conversation we're about to talk in? I mean, you're both faculty, how does that sort of, when you come from that empathetic perspective, how's that sort of defined you as a change maker? Because you said you were a change making faculty. And so just kind of coming down to our next question here is, people are already there, which is amazing. This is so cool. And they're already like, yeah, I'm already checked in. I'm good. I don't need the I'm going to go straight to the warm up session. And what do you think change making is? So, do you want to share with us what you think change making is and encourage others maybe to kind of ponder that thought? Because this is kind of where we're about to launch off into, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think change making is really focusing on and I think sometimes when people hear the word change maker, you think that it has to be this gigantic thing that you're doing, something that's blown way up and set up on a pedestal. And really, we're all change makers. If you think to your day to day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, there's probably several things throughout your day that we're doing to make changes and positive changes within the world. Through my own journey, I too thought, okay, how do I become a change maker? And then as you go along, you realize, okay, there are things that I've already been doing. So really focusing on, focusing in on issues or problems is one area where you can try to focus on making positive changes. But it can even be little things, little day-to-day things that you're doing. So opening a door for somebody, or like even the small things can lead to those positive, bigger changes later on down the road. So knowing as well, when you think about change making, that we all will make mistakes through those journeys, and to embrace those and have those growth type mindsets throughout, and to know that that some of the best things come out of our failures. So not to let that deter you from trying to make those changes that you'd like to see in the world.
And even trying to choose things that of focus which add to your own life. So what things can fill your cup up as you're trying to fill the cups of others, you know, as you're trying to help others.
Yeah, and if you're doing change making initiatives that you're very passionate about as well, it can make a huge difference with sustainability with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And just as we get started here today, because we're going to talk about your life pre-2020, right? This is sort of pre-2020, and how, you know, some of the things that we talk about in change making, you're right. And this workshop here is really talking about sort of 3 distinct pathways that you have gone on, and we can talk a little bit about this, but this idea of being the empathizer, the activist, and the champion, and maybe we can talk a little bit about this, and ultimately how embodying those pathways and those roles are really actually contributing to the global goals of the SDGs, which we're talking about with Changemaker and Residency Week, and sort of seeing and looking at it from the lens of quality education, being educators, but also using that education to break down barriers and reduce inequities and dismantle systemic racism. And, you know, I see the savvy ally in your background there. So we're gonna, and you've got that in the mural, we'll talk a bit later, but, you know, sort of, this is kind of what I think is, you know, before 2020. So before 2020, you know, this concept of what was your life like pre-2020, right? This is before you even knew about change making, because I remember seeing you on this journey, and we'd worked together in the past. And you put up your hand for this crazy project you were about to go on. But talk to us about where you were at as a faculty, because I think it's really important, or both of you, right?
Yeah. So did you want to start? Or do you want me to start with that?
Oh, I can start.
Okay.
Yeah. So pre-2020, my life, how would I describe it? It was where I felt like for years I was always doing the same thing, right? So as I touched on in my intro, I'm an educator. I've been working at Brock University for over 17 years now. I did my MA in applied linguistics as I was beginning to teach there in ESL services, which is teaching students, typically international students, English as a subsequent language. So diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been very important to me. Where our building is situated, it's somewhat separate from the main campus. So our goal the past many years has been finding ways to get our students more integrated with other students on campus before they become either undergraduate students, or in some cases, it'll be students who already have an undergraduate degree who will then be taking graduate studies, but trying to integrate them into the wider Brock community. So there has been a great focus for me, trying to get the students integrated that way. Also within my own lessons, trying to offer things where students are able to share about themselves, because I find that when we share about our own cultures, you know, our own even hobbies, food that we like, it can help to make connections within the group, right? So we're recognizing and embracing our differences and celebrating them. So yeah, so I know we say pre-2020, it almost feels like I know if we go back a bit further, it's almost like pre-COVID, right? Because COVID has really turned things around, and it's been a very, you know, negative experience, but there have been positive things that have come out of it. And one of them has been moving more towards connecting on a wider level. Like, for instance, like I've said, I'm from Brock University, and I made a mistake in the beginning saying I'm from Georgian College, because I've been working very closely with Georgian, and I honestly feel like it's my second workplace almost. And, you know, that's one thing that's come out of the pandemic, is being able to make those connections and being able to network more, because we were all forced online. and positive things have come out of it where we've kind of moved further and advanced more that way. So yeah, I don't know if you're wanting me to touch on my family. I have 3 children, a wonderful husband, which we're, you know, all pre-2020. So yeah, life has been, you know, very full that way. But again, even having children of my own, that focus on making schools more equitable, more inclusive, more welcoming and safe has been even that more important for me. So yeah, Jen, did you want to touch on your
Sure, and I must say that it's only a matter of time before we get Janice at Georgia College working with us. So when I'm focusing on life prior to 2020, and if I'm you know, kind of honing in on the work experience aspect of it, I think for myself, I always felt like I was a faculty that was very approachable, tried to really make it known that my classroom was an inclusive space, those types of things. But I got to a point in my career as well where I started questioning, you know, how much of this am I really doing, or is it just all words? You know, it's one thing to say at the beginning of a semester, okay, this is an inclusive space for all, but what does that really mean, and how can we then take steps to kind of promote more equity throughout? So it was kind of, you know, it's always kind of been in the back of my mind. If I'm going way back, when I'm thinking about the book side of things with Chapters4Change, the things that stand out the most to me is watching my parents both in the evening sitting down with a good book, and they'd be just reading, and every night that's what it was like. So I think when we really started focusing in on ways to continue with the promotion of that, it was kind of a given with the reading material aspect of it. But yeah, it's in my career itself, going back to that, I did kind of feel like I was in that state because I'd been at Georgia for like 14 plus years as you know, partial load faculty. So I'd be going and doing you know, some prep work, going to my class, then I'd just kind of leave and go home. So it was, I didn't really feel that sense of engagement as much. I didn't feel like I was diving into other learning opportunities myself as much as I could because of the going back and forth between home and work and being partial load. But so that is one bonus that I found with this online way of delivery, where I've had a lot more opportunity to attend different sessions, and we will be getting into this as we go on as to how that has really been promoted Chapters4Change.
Yeah. And I
motivated
think,
us.
sorry to interrupt, but I think like you can get stuck in just your regular routine, and you know, this has helped to push people out of their regular routines. I think certainly it's not just us. I think many people, it was almost like an awakening when you see, you know, so much devastation happening, and that over the pandemic and whatnot, it pushes everyone to kind of assess, okay, what is my life all about? What is the purpose of my life? Maybe I was afraid to take risks and challenges before. Now I am going to advocate for what I care about. I'm going to take those risks and challenges, and I would invite everyone else to do the same, because there's no better time than the present, to be looking toward what you can do for the future. So yeah, so I think really, you know, getting out of just the regular routine and having more things offered online. And I hope this continues. I know things are going more back to normal and more, you know, back to in person, but I really hope that a lot of these things online, you know, workshops and that are still offered, because it does allow more people to access them. And that is part of inclusion too, where, you know, some parents may have a very busy schedule, but they're able to slip away to their laptop in their home with their children, you know, and still go to those workshops. So sorry to get kind of off course there, but just, you know, just something that I think is very important.
No, I think that's an excellent segue because, this whole thing started with, the school had to adapt. And so what was the one thing? So you've got this, so January, you've got January 2021. So here you are, Jen, the whole world, and Janice, the whole world is flipped upside down, especially in higher ed. You're online, you're like, oh my God, what's WebEx? And so CTEL, so the Center for Teaching and Learning at Georgian College, starts this community practice. You want to talk to us a little bit about what happened here? You've got this first image I have on your screen here.
Yep.
What is this? What are we looking at here? What's going on here?
Sure. So in January, I signed up for 2 different COPs, which they stand for Community of Practice. So for those who aren't familiar with what a community of practice is, it's really just a group of people that come together to discuss. It can either be like a concern or a topic that they're passionate about in order to better understand the topic, throw ideas off of each other and that type of thing. So I entered into these 2 different COPs. So the one focused on change making and social innovation community of practice. So the first one there really touched on the key aspects of what change making is, as well as some of those key change maker skills and characteristics, and focusing on growth mindsets and how those can all relate to those 21st century skills that we're hoping to promote in our students as they become change makers and go off into the world. So it was really an eye-opening experience because I felt going into it that I had a little bit of an idea of what change making was, but then I quickly found out that there was so much more to it than I could have ever, imagined, and all of these different ideas bouncing off of everybody as we went through that process. The second one there, Change the Now. I completely had no clue what Change the Now was. So as I entered into that one, I was quite confused, thinking, what on earth is this? What is it all about? But very excited to learn more. And so Change the Now really focuses on taking those UN Sustainable Development Goals and kind of focusing in on, a key goal, looking at current issues, or like we like to say in Change the Now, a wicked problem, and working through human-centered design thinking in order to try to solve that problem. So we will get into a little bit more about human-centered design thinking as we walk you through that process of how we created Chapters for Change. But so went through that, also learning ways that we could, as faculty, embed some of these change-making tools and resources into our courses, which I've little by little been doing as much as possible, because it's just so exciting. After you go through this process once, you'll want to just keep doing it. So it was really eye-opening for me, and working through these COPs then helped to better prepare me for when I helped to facilitate the ECE, online remote field placement, for our second year students. And it was based around Change the Now as well. So I kind of was able to come into that space with some background knowledge with regards to Change the Now, so that I could better help prepare the students as they walked through that venture. Going just briefly back, I do need to do a shout out to Tracy Mitchell, Ashley, and Laura Koza for their amazing work on those co-facilitating those COPs. And really sparking the change maker in many of us as faculty. So I just have to do a shout out there, Nicole.
No, that's great. Yeah, they are great. We love it. They're both part of our center, and they're a large part of change making. And I want to kind of, just before we kind of go on to Change the Now and you're talking about it, because when we were talking about this, particularly both to you and Janice, was, we get a lot of times from faculty and individuals like, well, what is change making? And is it fair to say that it really is a verb and you have to do it? Like, what were some of the big aha moments? Because then all of a sudden, we're like, okay, you can run Change the Now as a field placement, as a field, like a virtual field placement, right? So, and ECE stands for Early Childhood Educator. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, early childhood education, yeah.
Yeah, and so you couldn't place anybody, and so we had offered to do Change the Now, and you're like, what's this? What? So you want to talk a little bit about like the culture shock that you had? Because I know you worked closely with Laura and I remember that. So that was lots of fun too, watching you kind of go through. Can you talk to us a little bit about you kind of the mental gymnastics that you went through?
Yeah, so actually entering into it, and it is because until you actually dive into it and work through the process, it can seem very daunting and overwhelming, where you're thinking, what on earth is human-centered design thinking? What on earth are the UN Sustainable Development Goals? How on earth does this all come together? So as a faculty member, diving into that, and again, I feel so honored and privileged that I was asked to facilitate that, and with the help of the center and Laura doing the workshops and everything. It was honestly life-changing for me as a faculty member. Very nerve-wracking at first, because you always want to do it justice, and as you learn through change making, it's all about making mistakes and trying again. As a faculty member coming into it, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to do this perfectly. I need to know what I'm doing. So I too was embracing all of these mindsets as we worked through the process with the students. But yeah, you really, in order to really embrace change making and truly understand it, diving straight in and working through the process, it totally changes who you are, or it did for me anyway, where after going through this process, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a faculty change maker. I'm so proud of this. And I just want to keep, motivating my students to get involved with this process. So with this change, the now EC field placement, what we actually did was had the students really focusing in on the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is focusing on quality education. From there, the students really focused in on the wicked problem of focusing in on providing quality education in remote learning and digital environments, because coming into it, they were thrown into this online field placement. I'm sure many of them were thinking, what on earth? I've signed up to be an early childhood educator. I want to be in the field with children. What is going on? I think by the end of the placement, they were all so very happy that they had the opportunity to take this and to really develop those 21st century skills that they could take away with them. So they focused in on what we call a wicked problem. And then they focused the question a little bit more as to how might quality education evolve in remote learning and digital environments. So the students were placed into, most of them were in groups of 4. I think we had one group, which was a group of 2, and they still pulled this right off and did an excellent job. But they really focused in on tackling this question from a multiple of different ways. So some groups may have focused on the child aspect of it. So when they're in that empathize stage, they're really looking at empathizing with the children in that scenario, and what can we do to help make this online digital learning environment better adaptable for children. Some may have looked at it from the parents' point of view and empathized with the parents to say, with their work schedule and children at home, what could we do, and to try to focus on issues there. And some looked at the educator side of things. So then they walked through that human-centered design process, defining the problem, brainstorming some solutions to their problems, and then really developing a concrete solution and pitching that idea through their Pekakucha presentations. And for those who don't know what that means, it's a presentation that is composed of 20 images, so oftentimes in a PowerPoint or something like that. And each slide you speak to for 20 seconds per slide. So it's a fairly quick all in all, but it really gets to the key points of their wicked problem and then how they decided to try to solve that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, and so you went through that whole process. I remember you saying to me, oh my God, I didn't think they'd pull it off. And we ended up pulling it off, and you're like, whoa, this works. I remember you saying that.
Yes.
Okay. So
I do remember saying that, and I I was actually going to mention that and I forgot, but I honestly, yeah, it got like right down to the deadline. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's a couple of groups that I'm so hoping that they got it. And we were totally blown away. We all got together at the end and the students, with the students, and had like a celebration where we watched all of their presentations and their pitches. And I was like in tears by the end of it. I was just so proud of the students and all of the hard work they put into it. And I was like, oh my goodness, like they're just all so phenomenal. And having that, you know, under their belt, and they received a micro credential for the through the center there, with regards to that UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, that they could then post on their LinkedIn site or that type of thing to really demonstrate all of the hard work that they put into this process. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and it was great. It was fun also. I remember being there and seeing some of them as well. So, okay, so the semester ends, you're done. You're like, okay, I learned about this human-centered design thinking process. Okay, great. I know it. I can teach it. Okay, now I go take this crazy mind-altering course on me and white supremacy with Jill Esmond. And I took this course too. And this just throws you like, this is great. So talk to me a little bit about what happened here. So you this is kind of the setup, I would call it, right?
So this is where I came into the picture. Excuse me. So it was the 17th annual Focus on Teaching conference was coming up. And Jen approached me and asked if I would be interested in presenting with her on the topic of integrating mindfulness into classrooms and how it can benefit student learning. It's something that we're both extremely passionate about. It's a topic that I had presented on in the past. And so I was right on board for that. I'm very excited. And within that week, I had signed up for several workshops, as had Jen. And one of them was a discussion panel led by Jill Esmond. Love you, Jill. She's awesome. And so I sat there watching this discussion panel with participants who had taken part in the Me and White Supremacy Learning Circle and talking about their journey and how it had literally transformed their lives and what types of activism they were thinking of taking and, you know, things that were happening since taking this learning circle. And the whole time I was listening to it, and I think I can speak to Jen as well, I was thinking to myself, I need to go through this process in some way. And at the end of the discussion panel, Jill made an announcement. There were a couple of spots left. And the first thought I had was, oh my goodness, I need to see if I can get one of those spots. The second thought was, I am not Jordan faculty at Brock University. I don't know if I'll be given one of these spots. But again, we need to take a pause here and say to ourselves, go for it. When you're not sure, go for it, right? It might be a no, it might be a yes. So don't be afraid and just go for what you want. So I emailed Jill immediately after that and asked if there was a spot available, if I would be able to, you know, take one of the spots, not being from Georgia, and she said yes. So it really started from there. And I don't know if we want to jump over to the next part there to start talking about the process of going through that learning circle. But like as Nicole said too, that you went through it as well, Nicole, where it was transformative is the word I would use for that. So it was, I believe this one that we took, I think it was 6 weeks, it may have been 5 weeks. But basically the way it was set up was where we were learning within a circle, using the circle way. And what that means is that we're in a type of learning environment where we are open and accepting to everybody. It's confidential. Everyone has a chance to speak. We use a speaking stone, right, that we pass as we're speaking, so that each person has the floor and is respected and really listened to. So it's a collaborative learning environment and totally transformative. I love learning circles now. I didn't mention this in my intro, but this whole process has prompted me to now, I'm in the process of applying to take my MA in social justice and equity studies through Brock University. And the research that I want to focus on is the use of learning circles and how they can promote educators to take on activism and to really become, I guess you could say, change makers in their own right. So anyway, from there, going through that process, we were left to ask ourselves a few questions. So the first question was, how might we continue this work? So after completing it, I think everybody who goes through this process probably asks themselves that, because it's not like when you read a book and then you set it aside, okay, I'm done, and you go on with your life. This book, if you haven't read it, please go get yourself a copy. You could even start your own learning circle with people you know, but you will be left with that question, as we were. So how might we continue this work? We also asked ourselves, how might we continue to educate ourselves further? And how might we help to educate others? And then ultimately, the big question was that we really wanted to hone in on was, how might we promote peaceful and inclusive learning environments? Because we are both educators, that's something we're passionate about. And so we were left with that question. And then you can see the visual there. I don't know, Nicole, if you can zoom in a bit on that visual, just so that we can see here. So we love this visual. Don't just tell a different version of the same story, change the story. So Chapters for Change, we're focused on change. So if we're looking at equality here in the visual, you can see, okay, it's equal, right? Everybody's standing on the same size crate behind this fence, but equality doesn't make things as you would think equal would be, right? We need to focus on equity. So equity is the first piece, where we're now making the changes needed so that there are opportunities for everybody to succeed, right? So you can see here, okay, people might need more than one crate in order to succeed, right? And then liberation is the ultimate goal. That's going to take a long time to get to. So equity is really the piece where we're learning, we're educating ourselves, and really pushing for the change that eventually, hopefully, will get to liberation.
That's great. So, so now you've done this. So we had change the now, boom. We had white supremacy, another boom. And now you're like, okay, so I've got this intention. And, you know, in education, we always leave students with, okay, what's this intention you're going to take away with you? Right. And so what did you guys do? You were like, hey, we have this intention. I know this like really cool process that I know works. So what happened? Boom. You're like, let's see if it works. Right. And so
I have to give kudos to Jen, because she introduced me to this awesome model, which we used. And yeah, so I feel very, very happy that she introduced me, because I was not aware of all of these steps either.
Yeah. So what's I think is really compelling to this, and when you guys shared this with me, I actually almost fell off my chair, because it was the first time I think in the work that we do that someone was actually, instead of just like, okay, the students have to go through it, but a faculty was like, hey, you know, I'm not just going to learn it, I'm actually going to do it. And I thought that was actually pretty brave, because it sort of, like you said, it goes against sort of this idea of, okay, so first of all, it gave you agency, right? So you could ask those questions. And then next of all, it gave you this iterative process. I think it gave you permission to fail. And it gave you permission to just figure it out. So you have done an amazing job here in sort of walking through this. Like, this is intense. I feel like you guys are faculty. Just took really awesome notes. So do you want to walk us through? So this combining now of these two things that happened, right? What did you do? Can you walk us through a little bit about each one of these stages real quick, and sort of talk about, well, first of all, let's talk about what Chapters for Change is. Let's start with the end. So you went through this process and you created this thing called Chapters for Change. So what was the end goal of Chapters for Change?
Do you want to take that part on? Do you want me to address that?
Sure. So Chapters for Change, our goal was to reach a wider audience. We're going to speak to this a little bit as we're going through it, but was to reach a wider audience in order to provide educational resources. Again, reading materials was our initial focus. We may expand it into also documentaries and stuff down the road. But we started with reading materials. So choosing books that really focused on, activism and highlighting issues, social justice issues of focus. And then we started creating, those educational resources that could be used by either educators or just anybody who's interested in reading and having some resources there to guide through and expand. It's great for book clubs, learning circles as well. So please, anybody who's watching, check out Chapters4Change.com. There's lots of things that are being constantly uploaded on the website.
Yeah, so this is it over here. So I just wanted to throw that, because when I think you start to see the stages that you go through, and that you ended in this sort of educational resources, you gave some hints to it over here about how, with your parents, is reading is so important. Then you gave us a little bit of hint over here that, you have a commitment, and now you're ending up with Chapters4Change. But let's talk about the empathize piece, because you talked about this with your ECEs where they took different perspectives. So what were some of the perspectives you took? So we're going to start with the empathize piece, then you had to define the problem, then you had to brainstorm. So can you walk us through some of these sort of first three stages here?
Yep. So with the empathize stage, we kind of came at it with regards like at two different ways. So empathizing with regards to the inequalities and injustices that currently occur, as well as from a standpoint of how do we help others who are interested in gaining more knowledge to continue on this venture. So again, we focused in on that how might we statement, which focused on how might we promote peaceful and inclusive learning environments. So we started off looking at those two first initial SDGs with SDG 10, where it's focusing on the reducing those inequalities, as well as the quality education piece with the SDG 4. And also pulled in that SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. So the one that really stood out that we thought kind of encompassed the first two ones was that peace and justice piece for strong institutions, because what we're really trying to do through Chapters4Change is to promote institutions that embrace everybody as they are, that embrace equity, inclusion, belonging, so that EDI piece. And, when you walk into that environment, that everybody knows that it's a safe place for them to go and to be and to show up as they are. So that was really important for us. So then we popped down to that define stage, where we sharpened our question a little bit more with regards to how might we help educate others and ourselves so that we may work toward those equitable, diverse, and inclusive learning environments for all people.
That's great. So you really narrowed it down. So you kind of went broad, and now you're sort of starting to see, right? Because that DEI piece, Janice, you were talking about that with Brock. So important, right? And you're starting to kind of, and as you were going through this process, because so now you get into the ideate and define, like, what was this, how, like, were you clear, or was it fuzzy, or were you like, did you have a lot of, conversations at the kitchen table? Like, kind of what was going on at that stage? Like, did you both think you were crazy? Like,
we were really excited, actually, really, passionately excited about it. And we had a lot of conversations virtually. we live about 2.5 hours away from each other. I'm visiting right now, so we're so happy to do that. But yeah, lots of phone calls with work schedules and that. I know Jen was extremely busy during certain parts of it. So we work really well together and balance things out when one person seemed to be overly busy, another person may have taken on more in one area than the other. But we had a really fun time collaborating on the ideate stage. And yeah, I'm just going to direct everyone to looking at that now. So where we went through, and this was our brainstorming piece where we were thinking of what are all the different things we can do. So the first one, I have to give a shout out to Catherine. I know I saw her little bubble floating around here. I think she's still in here, Catherine. But at the very end of the Me and White Supremacy Learning Circle, Catherine was a part of that. And we were thinking of it a little bit too, and then she vocalized it, which really pushed us and said, why don't we do a book club? So that's where all of this kind of branched off and began. So thank you so much, Catherine, for suggesting the book club to begin with. From there, we decided, okay, we need to create a website or something so that we can put resources on there that are easily accessible. We were using Teams at first, but again, I'm not within Georgian College. It can sometimes be tricky to get onto the folders and things in there to post. So we decided to do a website. And then we thought, okay, why don't we expand this? We can add things for, young readers as well, get our kids involved and other children involved as well, instead of just focusing on adult readers. And then from there, the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Instagram, and whatnot, and the Facebook page, So it kind of just went from there, where we came up with these ideas, and then each of us would spend time on certain areas to pull it all together.
So then the prototype stage.
And then the prototype stage was when we were putting it all together. And we decided within the website, it would serve as a one-stop hub where everything could be accessible. So you can see an image there of the website. So there, through the different tabs and that, it's easily accessible to be able to get to everything and click on things where it will take you to that, YouTube channel and whatnot. The website has been an excellent resource to get people involved and to easily find those educational resources. And I don't know if there was anything else for me to touch on in that area. Actually.
Oh, and then I was going to touch on this part. So when we tested it out, we basically just sent out a little message to our book club friends just to get some feedback on what they were thinking about this idea. Everyone seemed to be really on board, and then also reached out to some community members in that. And then it really then pushed us into pitching it. So our pitching it was basically launching it. Here it is. Here it is. Take it. So we already touched a bit on what Chapters4Change is, but within the organization or website itself, it really focuses then on where we started with the books of the month, gave resources on how you could start your own book club, how to take action in looking at equity and inclusive environments. And then we also brainstormed as things were progressing, the Changemaker spotlights had launched on all of our platforms as well. So those were up and running. We already touched a little bit about the book club, which each month we meet, and there's kind of like a book of the month that's happening there. The tweets for tolerance that you can see there, that's another initiative that we came up with just recently, because on November 16th is the International Day for Tolerance. So again, trying to get more awareness out there around those types of things, and making sure that we are being tolerant and inclusive of all people. I know that we're getting short on time here. Did you want to briefly
so I'll just go. So we did our first the Savvy Ally Learning Circle through Georgian College. It just wrapped up, I believe it was last week, which was absolutely excellent. I've now reached out to different school boards, and I'm in the process of integrating learning circles with their educators, and then they can bring it to other educators and learners and whatnot. We've started to do author interviews. Really excited to have author viewed Ariel Henley. A Face for Picasso is her memoir. Highly recommended. Excellent. Again, the Savvy Ally, we were able to interview Jeannie Gainsbourg, which was amazing. And we have other author interviews in the works coming up. And we also wanted to do a shout out again. Emma Greenfield has signed on as one of the educational resource developers with us for Chapters4Change. She's been very, an excellent person to work with, and supplying some of the resources that she also uses with her book club, which is excellent to amplify Indigenous voices. Yeah.
And then we just added a couple of quotes at the end there that we felt really stood out to our venture. So yeah.
Maybe we can just zoom in so people can see the quotes there, Nicole.
Yeah, I was just looking for the quotes. Where's the quote? The quotes?
Sorry, right at the bottom there beside Emma's face.
Oh, by Emma's face. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Just off to the side there, we just did a couple of different quotes there.
These ones?
Yes, yeah. So just create the change the world needs by creating change within yourself. We just feel so passionate about that. And again, looking at Layla there. And then Janice, did you want to touch on that?
Yeah, and then the second quote that is a driving force: start where you are, but don't stay there, right? So we all start within the circumstances that we're in, but we want to constantly be moving toward change. We don't want to stay where we are. We want to constantly evolve and change in order to create the world that's better than the way that we found it, leaving it better for, the next generation, and moving towards a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse world, which is accepting of all people.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I mean, this is fantastic. The fact that you came from where you started, back here where you were sort of, okay, where am I at in my career, in my life? What am I doing? We have a topsy-turvy pandemic. You went out into the community, you reached out, you took some of the programming that we have. You didn't know what you were doing. You weren't sure what this was all about, but you were beginner's mind, you were open, curious. And look at this, it led you down this crazy path, these steps, and you got the tools and resources. You didn't even know you had the tools and resources. You thought you were giving them to your students. And you got the tools and resources, were inspired by your students, inspired by your colleagues and your community, and thought, hey, we could do this. So this is a great story, and I love it because it shows to me that it's such a great example. You're right. Sometimes faculty need to be the smartest people in the room, and sometimes it's hard to embrace where this is. And I can say that being a part-time faculty, not a full-time faculty, but that ability to be brave and go through a process that allows you to fail, allows you to not get it right, and allows you to iterate. And when we come down here at the bottom, holy cow, you already kind of expanded and you keep going, right? You're learning on what you're doing, you're testing it, you're throwing it out. It's fantastic. So I just, I'm always so inspired to hear this. And I just love the fact that it was homegrown. It's so great to see the homegrownness. And of course, Janice, I'm talking like this because you already are at Georgian, so I wouldn't worry about that. But you know what? We couldn't do something with educators in their journey without a learning at the end. And these cards were actually developed by Laura Koza, right? And you learned about them in your community of practice. These are our intention cards. And so I want to invite everybody here, based upon what you heard today, what's one thing you want to take away by this empowering story? So there's a couple cards here. It's about creativity. So claim a card and then claim below something that you might do after hearing a story. And Janice and Jen, is there anything that you want to say to these people on the call today about claiming an intention around their own creativity and their own agency? Anything you want to say?
So I think one thing to throw out there is when you find a card that kind of stands out to you, I encourage you to, when you write your intention there, your I will statement of something that you're going to do, is to put your name on it. It's not a mandatory thing to do, but we found that, like Laura Koza likes to say, when you name it, you claim it, and you're more, it gives you more initiative to really follow through with that intention. So I kind of throw that out there when we're filling in these cards.
That's fantastic. So it looks like people are kind of looking at them going, oh, I'm not sure if I want to claim it. I have to do that whole process. You just have to call up Jen and Janice, and they'll take you through that whole process. And in fact, I think These are going to be doing Change the Now again next semester as well. And we may have some Change the Now participants on. We have international participants joining us. So I don't know if there's any alumni or anybody who is doing Change the Now right now, but if you're interested in it, would you recommend it, Jennifer? Would you recommend students take Change the Now?
Oh, 100%. I'd recommend everybody take Change the Now. I think it's such an amazing, amazing opportunity. And like I said before, to really gain those key skills that you don't even realize that you're developing until you get to the end of it, where you're like, oh my goodness, I'm an empathizer now. I'm a collaborator. I've learned how to come out of my shell. So many of my students, at the end of it, some of them were even nervous to type questions in the chat, but by the end of it, some of them had their cameras on, were asking the question. Like, it just, the amount of growth and like personal growth and professional growth that happens through that process, I would highly recommend it to literally everybody. It's an amazing experience.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear, because international has it right now. So that's fantastic. Well, on that note, this concludes our Innovators Journey. I highly recommend you stay in here. Thank you so much to Janice and Jennifer. Janice, is there any last sort of formative thoughts that you want to add as we move away, our Brockite, but now a Georgianite on the line?
I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to thank all of the attendees for coming. And I just want to leave everybody with the confidence that you can achieve so much in your life. Take risks. If you're afraid, that's a good thing. It means that you're going into an area that's pushing you beyond the limits that you've been before. And please, take those chances in life, because they can be life-changing, which this whole process definitely has been for me. So yeah, thank you to everybody.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us and sharing. So it's chapters 4.
Yep, the number 4.
Correct?
Yep, Chapters4Change.com is the website if anybody wants to go and check it out further. If you want to contact us, yeah.
All right, and on that note, we have concluded our Innovators Journey. Thank you so much. This has been recorded. We will have this posted on our YouTube site potentially next week, once our team is sort of on the other side of Changemaker Residency Week. But thank you so much, Jennifer and Janice, for joining us today. We really, truly appreciate seeing Changemakers grow in our faculty side, and you should be proud of yourself. So pat yourself on the back. And thank you for
we'll pat each other's backs.
We'll pat each other's backs. Okay, fantastic, everyone. I'm going to let you go now. It's been wonderful. My name is Nicole Norris, Manager of the Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation. Check us out on the Georgian website, and we will catch you on the flip side as we finish off Changemaker and Residency Week. Thanks, everyone. Have fun.
Bye.